Open source software is so cool, all encrypted, all Monero.
This generation being born now is the last free generation.
Remember, kids, you can't believe everything your parents say about privacy.
A lot of these companies that are going undercover are doing so in hacker communities. So there's a serious chance that you are in the presence of glowies, or glowy contractors more likely.
Intelligent evil dust scattered everywhere like confetti in everything.
The CIA fuckers glow in the dark. You can see them if you're driving. You just run them over. That's what you do.
The feds are spying on you. Just a few years ago, this was the kind of statement that you might only hear from some crazy hobos in the streets, but after the Snowden leaks, we learned that one of the National Security Agency's primary functions is collecting, archiving, and scanning the emails, text messages, and phone calls of every US citizen. Now, some people might say, oh, I don't care if they collect my data because I have nothing to hide.
The common argument that we have, if you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear, the origins of that are literally Nazi propaganda. This is not to equate the actions of our current government to the Nazis, but that is literally the origin of that quote. It's from their Minister of Propaganda, Joseph Goebbels. So when we hear modern people repeating that without confronting its origins, without confronting what it really says, I think that's harmful.
What they're really interested in is not your data itself, but they're interested in the metadata and the communications between foreign adversaries so that they can catch the terrorist. Really, that's the whole reason for this, right? While it is technically true that the communications of foreign individuals are fair game for the government to collect and analyze, they can go ahead and do that whenever they want, and communications between US citizens, that is what requires a warrant to collect. There's loopholes that allow the feds to bypass that. Like if you or one of the people that you've spoken to recently is having conversations with a foreign adversary, then that would be enough to give the feds legal permission to record your calls and to make copies of your messages.
As someone who loves to document how human civilization actually works, we're in constant warfare with those people who are trying to distort the understanding of how human beings actually behave, including distortions by proxy, which is to come up with nonsense about WikiLeaks or me. I think my favorite allegation is that I'm a cat torturer. No, seriously, AFP, Agence France Presse, put that everywhere, and even into New York Times. I don't really know where to start for people who aren't familiar with this kind of disgusting machine that the media is and how it works. Perhaps it's enough to say most human wars have come about as a result of lies. Democracies have to be lied into war.
Threat intelligence firms like ZeroFox, Dark Owl, and Searchlight Cyber are just some of the few firms that engage in this kind of snooping of private communities by going undercover with anime profile pictures, pretending to be hackers like, oh, how do you do, fellow kids? Do you have any extremist memes that you'd like to share with me? Any databases that you've hacked recently?
If we don't have privacy, what we're losing is the ability to make mistakes. We're losing the ability to be ourselves. Privacy is the fountainhead of all other rights. Freedom of speech doesn't have a lot of meaning if you can't have a quiet space, a space within yourself, within your mind, within the community of your friends, within your home, to decide what it is that you actually want to say. Without privacy, you don't have anything for yourself. So when people say that to me, I say back, arguing that you don't care about privacy because you have nothing to hide is like arguing that you don't care about free speech because you have nothing to say.
There are a lot of concerns regarding privacy when it comes to some of the things that these tech giants do. It's one of those things where people will say, well, why do you care if you're not doing anything wrong? You tell me. The nurse said to send photos so the doctor could review them in advance, describing how an ordeal began in February of 2021 for Mark, who had a sick son. Mark's wife grabbed her husband's phone and texted a few high-quality close-ups of their son's groin area to her iPhone so she could upload them to the healthcare provider's messaging system. In one, Mark's hand was visible, helping to better display the swelling. Mark and his wife gave no thought to the tech giants that made this quick capture and exchange of digital data possible, or what those giants might think of the images. With help from the photos, the doctor diagnosed the issue and prescribed antibiotics, which quickly cleared it up. So we're all good, right? Wrong. because he used Google.
From what's expressed in the legal document is that this new policy is to protect children that are online. The first paragraph is just all these different statistics about how like 1 in 2 children that use the internet get groomed in some way. So really, the bill's name describes it perfectly. The EU wants to control all forms of chat online that a child might use. Not the stuff that's expressly marketed to children like Club Penguin and Roblox. No, anything a kid might use that a kid might be curious to try out, which is basically any online service ever. The EU policy would require client-side scanning of everyone's communications, which means that every single company that runs things like email is going to have to scan it for bad images. Every company that makes any app that allows you to communicate online in any way is going to have to actively scan people's messages for CSAM.
2 days after taking the photos of his son, Mark's phone made a blooping notification noise. His account had been disabled because of harmful content that was a severe violation of Google's policies and might be illegal. He filled out a form requesting review of Google's decision explaining his son's infection. At the same time, he discovered the domino effect of Google's rejection. Not only did he lose emails, contact information for friends and former colleagues, and documentation of his son's first years of his life, but his Google Fi account shut down, meaning he had to get a new phone number with another carrier. Without access to his old phone number and email address, he couldn't get the security codes he needed to sign into other internet accounts, locking him out of much of his digital life. A few days after Mark filed the appeal, Google responded that it would not reinstate the account with no further explanation. Mark didn't know it, but Google's review team had also flagged a video he made, and the San Francisco Police Department had already started to investigate him. An investigator, whose contact information was provided, had asked for everything in Mark's Google account, his internet searches, location history, his messages, and any document, photo, and video he'd stored with the company. Now, I know what somebody's going to say, Lewis, you probably didn't accept, you didn't read the Fuck you people who say you didn't read the EULA. The EULA is 900 pages long, it's written in legalese, and nobody fucking reads that shit because it's impossible. Shit like this should be opt-in, not opt-out. This is something that I call EULA roofing. Yes, I should have checked my drink and brought it to a chemist or something before I put it in my mouth when it was off to myself. No, we live in a society where we should have some sort of basic fucking human decency towards each other, and that includes not EULA roofing you.
You can do a calculation. How many deaths is journalists responsible for? And I did it in the United States because there's figures for the total number of political journalists. It's about 5,000. It's something like 200 kills per journalist in the last 20 years. Just the US journalists alone. Because they would not do their job, they would not be accurate, and because they lacked courage.
I'm sick and fucking tired of hearing people say, you know, these people are just all privacy nuts, or they're just way too concerned about privacy, these wing nuts that care so much about not being watched all the time. Yes. If I'm not doing anything wrong, and I'm taking part in an activity that is none of your fucking business, I have nothing to gain from you watching me all the time, and I might not want you watching me all the time, because when I'm doing something innocent, like taking a picture to send to my child's doctor, as requested by my child's doctor because my child is sick, you may misinterpret that because you're an idiot, whether you are a silicon-based idiot, or whether you are a carbon-based life form-based idiot. They come in many forms nowadays with artificial intelligence. You may wind up running to the police and massively fucking up my life, because here's the thing in America, regardless of whether you're innocent or guilty, the moment they run to the police with that shit, they have massively fucked up your life. And if there's no benefit to me, to you seeing what I am doing, then frankly, you should have no fucking business looking at what I'm doing.
Something that I found really disturbing when looking into these different companies was the short video from an intelligence analyst that works at CyberInt, an Israeli threat intelligence firm.
I prefer to detect threat actors when they're young or starting out at 14 or 15. That's when I start observing and documenting their malicious activities. Because when they're at that age or stage in their career, they're a lot more careless and open, like they tend to show off more. There is a common misconception about hackers, wherein we think they solely operate on financial gain. But I think hacking is a lot about knowledge and power. Unlike in the physical world, you don't need to come from a privileged background or a rich family or a famous family to make it in cyber. You can dominate the playing field just by being creative and resourceful. It's a cat and mouse game between you, the cybersecurity professional, and the bad guys, the threat actor.
So there you go. It's a lot easier to catch the threat actors when they're 14 or 15, because then they're young, dumb, and more likely to make OPSEC mistakes when bragging about their Hackerman escapades. Kind of makes you wonder if Omnipotent or maybe Pom Pom Purin ever had conversations with undercover operatives like this back when they were kids.
And in terms of the Internet of Things, there's research prototypes now which are being used by intelligence agencies of very small electronic circuits that you can put in paper or put in paint or on the walls that are powered by the GSM stations. And they operate as the GSM radio wave passes through them. It gives them enough power for a very small amount of time to do things. Intelligent evil dust scattered everywhere like confetti in everything. I think it's increasingly hard for human beings to work out how to deal with that. The only way I can see is that we've got to securitize this problem. Computer security industry has been engaged in outrageous securitization for a very long period of time. It needs to be securitized in a different way. So we need to securitize the threat to elites by these developments. The people who run these companies, it's a threat to them. It's a threat to the most powerful people in society. And to eliminate the notion that there's a place that powerful people can hide from, or skilled people can hide from this phenomenon. And that's the way to get all those people who have an ability to make a difference to make a difference.
The EU is not going to make kids any safer with this policy. And I think it's really just time for them to stop thinking about the children altogether, because it's getting creepy at this point.
Remember, kids, you can't believe everything your parents say about privacy. Timmy, does Mommy know that Daddy spends his whole workday surfing sports websites? How about you, Susie? I bet your daddy doesn't know Mommy's been Googling old boyfriends again. Now, kids, I want to share our newest invention. With these Google Y Spy glasses, I can see everything. Hey! There he is again! Get him! Oops, time to go, kids. Remember, we put the Ogle in Google.